Hi, this is Phil Shapiro in Tacoma Park, Maryland. I am doing a video interview with my friend Caleb Hawkins. He's an open source and a musician buddy of mine. And we've known each other for several years. And this is our first time kind of meeting via video. It's kind of fun. Caleb, tell me a little bit, how did you get into open source? How did that come into your life?
Well, my brother is kind of a big Linux nerd. He was using commercial waste computers back in the 90s and programming his own operating systems from scratch. And, as I started to become more digitally aware, it was just sort of something that kind of fell in my lap, really. I worked a summer, built a deck with my dad, who was a remodeling contractor. And at the end of that job, I went out and bought a laptop, decided that I really just despised Windows XP. And ultimately, I ended up moving to a Mac. But I still had that laptop, and I just thought it was a piece of garbage. And then I was given an early release of Ubuntu, and installed that, and finally that made the thing usable for me. So I walk the line a little bit between open source and closed source software. I do primarily use Mac OS, but in a pinch, I do quite a bit of work on Linux.
Great. Well, that is interesting. And you are a singer-songwriter, right? You compose your own songs?
Yeah. I'm a fifth generation musician. I grew up playing music. If you wanted to have anything to do at the holidays, you better have learned to play at least 3 chords on something. So my grandfather kind of inspired me to get into playing multiple instruments, and I play guitar, banjo, mandolin, fiddle. Can get around on probably half a dozen other things as well. So
neat.
Yeah, that's kind of my roots in a synopsis, I guess. I think the first recording software that I ever got along with was Audacity, which is an open source program.
Okay.
I did quite a bit of work on that early on, and one of the albums that I put out not too long ago was actually mostly recorded in Ardour, which is also an open source program. So. Yeah, I'm no stranger to it. More than the audio side, I do most of my graphics design for my posters and promotions for my shows. I've been using Inkscape. I think that's how we met. I think I might have tweeted something about using Inkscape, and you shouted back at me about it.
Okay, yeah.
I've become very comfortable on Inkscape, and I've recently just kind of had to dive into GIMP more because of just the demands of what I'm doing now. So that's where I'm at. A friend of mine just gave me a year of Creative Cloud with Adobe, and I find it just sluggish and slow. I can't understand why this is the industry standard.
Now, I think you do your own posters for your shows. Is that right?
I do, yeah. Posters. It's kind of funny how all that worked out. I got some pretty good publicity going around town, got some decent shows, and I needed to do the advertising. And just hiring somebody, the cost was pretty prohibitive. So a friend of mine installed Inkscape and kind of got me started with that, showed me how to do layers, which was just this radical thing for me. I'd never really attempted anything like that. And I just kind of whiled away the hours and logged plenty of time on YouTube watching tutorials, and that became kind of home for me. So,
now, do you print at home, or do you take it to some printing place?
I don't, mostly because I really have a very bad relationship with most printers.
Okay.
On the consumer end, I don't really see that we have the resolution.
Right.
And I refuse to spend that much money on ink.
Right.
So for less than $10, I can usually go to Office Depot or Office Max or Staples or somewhere and print off what I need.
Right.
Do
you take the file as a PDF or something?
Yeah, I take it as a PDF. I just put it out as a 300 DPI image. So the files are kind of large, which is why I take them on a flash drive rather than trying to upload them to an email server or anything like that. I usually just hand them a flash drive. They had no problem with it.
Okay.
And I've just gotten pretty comfortable with doing that. Even my CD jackets and things, which I wish I had one I could drag into the frame. I don't. Yeah, all my merch is in the other room. Okay. I duplicate my own CD jackets. Okay. I use recycled paper and as much eco-friendly processing as I can to do it.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean that's where I'd say the heart of my open source journey is doing mostly the graphic stuff. I haven't gotten along with Jack so well in the Linux environment as I have with Core Audio on a Mac. Okay. Usually when I'm trying to do audio work, I want to be up and running within seconds. And Linux, I just don't feel like it's quite evolved as quickly as I would like. Mac has a very long legacy with audio. So for me, that's made the most sense to just be up and running and while the inspiration is there. So that's what I do. But, I run quite a bit of free and open source software, even on that side of things.
Remind me your physical location. Which city and state are you in?
I'm in Indianapolis again. Okay. I lived down in Naples, Florida for about 3 years, and then I moved back up here late last summer. So okay. I'm back in the town I kind of started all this in.
Tell me the story about, was it a refurbished Linux computer that you helped a family get?
Yeah, so a friend of mine, he used to work for quite a large firm, I guess, and whenever they would get new computing systems, he would haul the computers away and just kind of stockpile. And he was a bit of a hoarder. I'm serious about this. He had literally paths through his house. The house was floor to ceiling with junk. There was old keyboards and towers and screens and you name it was just kind of stockpiled there. But he gave me a Dell tower with a Pentium 4 in it. We chucked as much RAM as we had slots for in it and took probably the most powerful graphics card he had, which, in the grand scheme of things, I think that maybe had 128 megabytes of memory in it. It wasn't super powerful, but it worked. And that was my Linux box. For the longest time, I used Linux on that. When I was moving back up here to Indianapolis, I had a yard sale, just kind of clearing out the things that weren't going to fit on the truck to move. And that was one of the things that kind of was it wasn't going to make the trip. I just wasn't going to bring it. It just wasn't powerful enough for my use now. And I had a Hispanic family. We lived in a duplex, and the Hispanic family next door, I always felt bad because being a musician, I'm loud, I'm noisy. I don't keep normal 9 to 5 hours. I come home at 1 a.m. after a show and still want to make noise, But Mom and the 2 kids came out to see what we were selling, like you do when your neighbors are having a yard sale. And they saw the computer, and the youngest boy, he spoke more English than anybody else in the family. So he came up and he's kind of asking about the computer and asking me how much. And, I felt bad because, I really wasn't that great of a neighbor. So I told him, you can have it for $30. I didn't even really have a monetary value on it. I just wanted it gone. So I gave it to him for $30 with basically, I guess the agreement was that I would take it over to their house and kind of put it all together because, I had it disassembled. It was in my driveway. So I took it into their living room and I hooked up all the cables, the mouse, the keyboard, the monitor, everything, and helped them get it online. Thankfully, they had some Ethernet cables that came with their Comcast, so I was able to get it up and running. It didn't have Wi-Fi. Too old for that. And it was really cool because it took probably a good solid 10 minutes of explaining that this wasn't Windows, this wasn't any operating system like anything he'd ever seen in school or at the public library. And that was a little bit of a game changer when he figured out that he could go to the software center and get all these free games. But more importantly, I think for this family, they were here. They literally had nothing. I mean, I looked in their house. They had a couch that I think they'd picked up on trash day, and a broken washing machine. I mean, it was pretty barren. But to take this program and give it to them and say, look, all these games are free, and the Linux games, some of them are remakes of Mario Kart and classic games like that. But there were also math games, and there's some science games. There was a program I found that would teach them to speak English, which was really awesome. I can't remember the names of all these programs, but I was also able to set them up with Skype, and that was a real game changer because all of a sudden Mom could talk to her mother back in Mexico. So that was a real big game changer. I got that set up for them. We actually had a USB microphone that I gave them as well, so they were able to be up and running and doing all this stuff, and it changed their whole world. I sat down for the afternoon after the yard sale was up, and kind of showed them all these different programs and games and things they could do. And again, it took a little bit to figure out they couldn't just go and maybe jump right into Flash games and things like that online. That was a little bit of a letdown. But the stuff that was there and the fact that it was free was really enticing this family. And then the dad came home, and he was really surprised to see me in his house. I think he'd kind of always seen us as the next door neighbors who, really didn't talk to him too much. Mostly I feel like it was because of the language barrier. We just never really interacted. And here I am sitting on the floor in his living room with his kids gleefully watching videos on YouTube. And, he sat down with me, and I showed him where he could take these courses on the MIT website. He could take these college courses and things. And that was a mind-blowing experience for them. That was the coolest thing, to just kind of watch the light bulbs come on and to realize that all of a sudden, without a whole lot of money invested, they were able to open up the entire world to their home. I think that was probably the most gratifying experience. I felt like I needed to just give them their money back. It was worth it to me. For me, open source software, I think you've talked about this too, it restores the dignity of people who don't have a lot of resources. As a teenager, I didn't have a lot of money to get into the beginning aspects of audio production. And I remember I went to the guitar store and I bought a copy of Cakewalk, Sonar's Cakewalk, and I set it up. It cost me $250 for this box of basically air and one compact disc. And then I realized after the salesman sold it to me and told me it was everything I needed, that I didn't have a computer fast enough to run it. And there was also a lot of stuff there I just didn't need. And I lost quite a bit of money because I never did successfully manage to get that program to work with my system. Had I known about Audacity at the time, I probably would have bought a better microphone. But I used Audacity for about 3 years, up until the time that I moved to my first Macintosh computer. And at that point, we're talking G5 processors. I had a whopping 512 megabytes of RAM, and I think it was a 1.5 gigahertz processor and a 40 gig hard drive. I mean, my phone's faster than that thing ever was. But again, I transferred right over, started using Audacity on that thing at first, and GarageBand was, I think, in version 2 at the time, so I started playing with that a little bit. Later on, I transitioned to a program called Traction, which I still use today. I think I picked up version 2, and now I'm on version 7. That is actually a cross-platform. That has a Linux distribution as well, although I haven't installed it. But I do collaborate with at least one musician right now who is using it on Linux successfully. So,
Is that a commercial product or is it open source?
It is commercial. Okay. I don't know how they handle the Linux side of it. I don't know if you can compile source or not with them. Okay. It's a very economical program. I think a brand new license is only like $60.
Okay.
So it's not a super high end program. It competes out there with programs like Reaper and some of the other programs. So that's what I've been using. I fell into that, I think around 2005, 2006. So.
Okay. Well, that is interesting. Now, yeah. Can you tell me anything about? Have you met other open source folks in your community in Indianapolis, or? Do you want to also maybe just comment on the general personality type of open source people? They tend to be pretty outgoing for the most part. They love to talk.
Yeah. A dear friend of mine, Nate Velati, who's played on a couple of my albums, and we've done a lot of adventures together. He was avid Linux user, open source advocate. He's pretty against the closed source system because he just feels like it's not future proof. It's also just not economically viable. We've done a lot of collaboration together. He now lives in the Chicago area, so we kind of do things remotely through the internet. I don't know too many open source users here in town. I have showed some of those programs and things, mostly the open source programs on closed source operating systems, to friends who need setup. I've had a couple of friends with older computers that I have, installed Ubuntu on there and got them up and running again after they got, the loss of support for XP, things like that.
Right.
The Linux community here, I know there is one. I don't see a lot of, creative artists. It's mostly technical people. It's mostly server admins and things like that for Fortune 500 companies. Right. So I really haven't had too much interaction here. Overall, what I've experienced with the Linux community is we're all very much a DIY kind of crowd. Right. We do a lot of things ourselves, sometimes to our own detriment, but, we had to prove it could be done. So.
Right. Well, this is so much fun. I'm talking with Caleb Hawkins, who is an open source and a musician buddy of mine. And this is such a delight. We should do it again sometime.
Yeah, definitely. Talk about music sometime. I know you delve into that a little bit. Right now, I'm kind of between album releases. I'm kind of writing for my next one. And really, I've been ramping up the video production side of things. I guess right now, again, I'm riding that fine line between closed and open source software, trying to teach myself to use DaVinci Resolve, which is a cross-platform distribution. I've been using that one, getting kind of in-depth with it, trying to do all that work, which is why I have the computer I have now. Round 3 of major upgrades, I finally have a MacBook Pro with enough processing power to do HD video in a multi-camera setting. So
okay,
that's a fun hourly project. Video takes a lot more work than audio.
Right. Well, I'm going to have to get going, but it's so nice to chat.
Yeah, well, let's do it again anytime. I'm excited to talk more about the creative side of computer usage. So
good. And if people want to reach you, what's your email and what's your Twitter?
You can reach me the easiest. Just you can go to Caleb at calebhawkins.com. Okay. And also just go to my website, calebhawkins.com. Has also all my social media accounts on there and my music videos. It's all right there. That's kind of the hub for everything. So
right. And it's Hawkins with an INS, Hawkins. Great.
Correct. Yeah.
Great. See you next time, Caleb. See ya.
All right. See ya, Phil. Bye.